we are so thrilled to have you with us today for this open forum. We try to do this once about every 6 months, I think is what we've been doing this, is just have, we always pick the topics and we try to hear from you all as we move through our calendar of planning for topics for the forums. But once in a while, it's nice to have just a day where we can ask questions. We can ask questions of each other, and we can generate some dialogue a bit more with the time that we have during our forum. So today, I have several people who did submit some questions in advance. Very, very much appreciate that. But before I dig into those, I would just love to open it up and see if anyone wants to go first and pose a question to the group. Obviously, you've got the PRIDE team here on hand, but also some great fellow colleagues with us today. And hopefully we can all share experiences and learn from each other. So Bob, go for it. I love it when someone volunteers to go first. Yes.
Well, yeah, I've over the years, I've learned that that's actually the smartest thing to do, because otherwise there's nothing left to ask. So I just, I want to get it out there. So I'm the chairman of the Brehm Preparatory School Foundation, and our new director, Annie, is on the phone with me. But our issues may have been experienced by others, but I'd love to get some advice. So we have gone through a few years. Obviously, COVID is a big deal. Our kids have learning differences and disabilities, and we, basically tailor make a program for each student. So it's very staff intensive, and the ratio is kind of amazing to educate these kids. But at our foundation, we've gone through a few years where there's been turnover. And when you've got a relationship business, if you will, I feel like we're starting from a sort of a standing start, as opposed to, accelerating beyond what we've done the past few years. But when you have sort of this turnover, and we're so small as an organization, I'm just trying to get some advice on how do you sort of restart the flame, if you will, because these relationships have not been sustained. And, I always think of it as there's sort of a core group that's really committed, and maybe you start there and you start branching out. But I'd love any tips any of you would have on how do I ignite some passion when we've had just a few tough years where it's been it just hasn't been maintained. My other philanthropy is large. I was the chairman of the Carlson School at the University of Minnesota. We just raised $200 million, but those people are engaged in, you could all day long, you could make calls and get money. Here, I'm just trying to get the spark going and see what advice you might have.
Thank you for asking that question, Bob. That's perfect.
Bob, thank you for going first. And I agree, it's nice to go first sometimes. So smart man. I am going to defer to others because you get to hear from me regularly on some thoughts. I have some thoughts, but I would love to see if anyone else has something interesting and fun that they can share that can help spark here.
I mean, I'll go. I don't know about interesting and fun, but I do know intimately the mission of Brehm and the significant impact that you have on your students, the families, their futures, who they are when they grow up, or, whatever it is, how they spread their wings. And I think that in your case, it really is heavy on the interpersonal side, which is a little different than higher education, right? You have such an incredible story. You are able to reignite that with the parents, with the people who have been impacted by it, and asking them for their help. So sitting down with them and saying, this is what we're doing. We need to be able to do this to sustain. This is our goal. This is our dream. This is what we're wanting to build. We need people to be a part of this. I'm asking you, as someone who believes in this so much that I volunteer my time all the time, your passion will infect in a good way. I came from healthcare, so you always have to like say that, and infect in a good way. It will infect other people, and then asking them to be a part of what you're doing. So you're not just telling them, but you're inviting them to be excited with you, because I think your mission and your stories are where it's at. And if you don't know how to open that door, if you don't have the projects perfectly lined out, if you don't have that message to perfectly pitch to them, then ask if you can sit down with them and see what their story is. And they will invite themselves to be passionate about what it is that you're doing. And they will say, or you might have an opportunity to fix something. But I love whenever you're working, what BREM does compared to higher education, and not that BREM doesn't do higher education, but I mean, in terms of, university fundraising, it's personal. It is about the story. It is about the mission. It is not about walking across the stage and they hand you an annual appeal letter as they hand you your graduation tassel. It is very different, but it's transformational gifts as compared to transactional gifts. And that means, unfortunately or fortunately, that you got to sit down and do it, face to face. And they'll feel that fire coming from you as compared to sending emails, sending annual appeals, and just hoping for people to get engaged. It's sitting down and having those conversations. So it's not exciting, Marty, I don't think, but that's what I think.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. To me, our biggest fans are the families. But they're also the families who are paying $80,000 a year for their kid to be educated. Yeah. And so, it's not like they necessarily have a lot of things lying around for philanthropy, but they do see the magic we can perform on their child. And sometimes I'm always surprised that even though we're an expensive institution, just because of our numbers and the staff needs, that's where our best donors come from. And so then I'm trying to say, well, what's the next ring and the next ring and the next ring? Because if we just stay with families, I can predict there's a cap on that as to how much we can And
Bob, and that's where this journey that you're on is so beautiful, because by bringing those families in, so you bring, a family in, they become a volunteer, they're on a committee, they're bringing you all the relationships that they have. So you're expanding your pipeline through the family so that you aren't just going back to the same families over and over again. You're bringing the people like me who have seen intimately how BREM impacts people. I don't have a child that goes to BREM, but I'd love to support them. And by someone bringing me to the table and getting me involved. So that's where, your circles of influence will increase and increase and increase by asking them to be involved, which is the process that you're in, the committee structure, getting people involved, all these people rowing in the same direction. So you're increasing your scope. And also, I would challenge you in that how many people give to higher education with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt from that organization. So don't think just because they're paying tuition that they don't also want to do something wonderful with the generous dollars that they have to give away. Most people have dollars that they want to give to support something in addition to tuition dollars. So it might as well be you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Shawna. I'm actually picturing the visual. I can't remember if anyone on this call was on the workshop that we did earlier this week, but Patty went through, and it was a great stick figure infographic of you showed, one person having a conversation with one person who introduced, and this was a real sample. Patty, you could chime in here of where it went, but this person did not know, 3 or 4 people removed, but was directly responsible from the connections that went to different connections for, $5 million in a specific campaign. And that was just the power of that one person. And again, that's truly, what we do through building. We might say, I know 2 people, but I got a great story to tell, and I'll talk to someone else. And I think, Bob, especially with your situation there, we feel like it's a very small inner circle right now, but we're just getting started to branch out on that. And that's a super exciting time to be in. One last thing that I would love to chime in, just because we are in this unique position of kind of right on the heels of the pandemic. in the middle of the pandemic, or very beginning, honestly, like people we started these forums, and some of you were on them at the time, and it was a scary time, and the people were like, how can I go and call people and talk to them? Like, do we not know what's going on in the world? It seems kind of insensitive. And the organizations that shut down and said, hey, we're not going to talk to people, are having a hard time to come out of that. But the places that are like, I'm just going to call, I know that I don't know what to say right now, but I'm just going to call and say, how are you? I think that's a really great strategy when we're looking to re-engage people, is just calling them to say, how are you? Like, we just want to check on you. We're actually doing big things now, and we haven't been for a while. Acknowledge that. Transparency, and just like, there's no time like the present to make that phone call to say, how are you? And really listen, and then let them know a couple things about what you're doing, and see if they bite on, hey, wow, I would be willing to help, or ask them, would you be willing to help us? And we're trying to grow a support network. So I know that it's scary, and I literally just got off a call right before this as well, with someone saying, like, just feel like we have to keep putting this funding process with their, they're in a joint campaign where they are philanthropically funding some of it. They're working to secure a loan as well, and the loan is taking longer. So they keep going back to the community saying, okay, we're not breaking ground yet, and this is what we're waiting on. And they're like, I feel like we got to wait to have this event before we have something new to say. I was like, no, now is the time to have that event, because if you're scared to talk to them and you stop talking to them, you're going to lose them. Now is when you say, hey, we are doing things, but it's, here's what's happening, and we had to pivot, and we had to change, and we're communicating. So I think the moral of the story is just, sometimes it's okay to feel like, I don't want to make this call, but let's just reach out and see how people are doing. And if you start with them, sometimes it comes back. So
we call that eating the frog, right, Marti?
Yes, exactly.
Eat the frog first.
So anyway, thank you, Shawna. And I'm sorry I took longer than I meant to, but Bob, really appreciate the question. Anyone else? Maybe a follow-up question, maybe a new question. We're happy to go in any direction. Shall I field one of the questions that have been submitted in advance?
Sure.
So I've got from someone, has everyone moved from virtual events back to live events? I know some of you have experience in this realm. Donna Steins, do you mind me putting you on the spot? What's going on there in West Tennessee?
Yes. So we have transitioned. We're planning a gala this year. We've had face-to-face meetings. We've got face-to-face events planned throughout the year. So we are full force moving forward with meeting face-to-face with people.
Elizabeth Waters, do you want to chime in?
Sure. So we are also face-to-face. We just held a fundraising event last Saturday that drew in, probably still waiting on numbers, but probably over 3,000 people. So yes, face-to-face is back.
Awesome. I hope that was a very successful event.
Yes.
3,000 people is a lot of great impressions. I hope you raised some good funds too. So I have got a follow-up question to that. How can we avoid all the time being taken up by special events again and avoid going all in on them? I think that the theme that I've been seeing is, yes, people are excited to get back together, and there is that, connectivity that an event brings. And I know there's a lot of enthusiasm, both from staff, volunteers, especially, to say, hey, we want to do this, let's have these events. But we don't want to take and completely go all in on events and lose sight of our bigger overall projects and campaigns. Can anyone speak to anything that you've been able to do to perhaps streamline your processes, or what you've looked at to make sure that you balance that?
Well, in our case, we're kind of rural. Okay, so we don't. People are not in person is possible, but only a couple times a year when the families are in town and the kids move in or the kids move out, or this year we're celebrating our 40th anniversary. So we're trying to make something of that. but it really doesn't matter in my mind what the theme is, as long as there's an excuse. And, you know, I mean, 40 years is great, but, you know, 41 will be just as good. So, you know, it's a milestone kind of thing. But if you don't make those milestones into something, you know, positive from a philanthropy point of view, you've just wasted one of your opportunities. We will always be hybrid because of that physical distance. And frankly, before the pandemic, we weren't. It was, you know, mail and that kind of thing. But at least we've done some hybrid fundraising. I mean, some online fundraisers during the pandemic and so forth. And first of all, it's not that hard to do. It's a lot cheaper. And, you know, I never say it, but I've gone to some galas, you know, for different causes. And I keep thinking, well, yeah, I'll write a check, but just think what they could have saved without this big party, you know? I mean, because we know it's crazy expensive, but you're getting people together and excited and all that, it's all worth it. I'm just saying for us, it wouldn't make so much sense just because of our unique situation, our geography.
Yeah, I know, and we have a couple of clients on here with that more widespread geography. And I think that this next question, maybe we can engage in a little conversation on this, because you know, the question I have here is, do you still have donors requesting to have virtual meetings, or are they all alive again, as far as actual making asks or meeting about your projects? Are we still using that as a tool that pre-pandemic would never have happened? Jennifer Bartz, do you care weighing in on this? I know you have a pretty big footprint that you're working with.
Yeah, you know, I think I have a virtual meeting with somebody on Monday, and I think we're all in Albuquerque, but it's like after hours, you know, after work hours. And so I think they requested it that way, and I'm totally fine with that because I've got my kids running around. So for my perspective, I think, like you, Bob, you know, I'm kind of going with what's important to my families and what works best for them. So oftentimes we are doing virtual things, like our support group is virtual and things like that, because we serve the entire state with our virtual support group. And I think there's probably still going to be quite a few people that I meet in the next coming weeks that are going to be virtual too. Just because of that, it's just challenging. So it's easier, I guess, like now to get a virtual meeting set up. You're not driving somewhere to meet someone. So we still are doing quite a bit of that. And I was thinking about the last question, because we just were a presenter at a, it's called Parents Reaching Out. It's essentially for medically complex kids. It's the biggest conference in the state. And I presented there, and you have to register to go. And they had probably 1/5 of the people come that registered. And so they had put on this big, like they had a dance, they had, you know, food catered in for every meal. And so we're all sitting in this huge ballroom, and there's like 1/5 of the food is getting eaten. And so I think there's still, you know, especially when we're serving families who have medically complex kids and things like that, there's still a lot of hesitation, at least within my realm. And so I think probably we're going to be doing a lot of virtual, and I'm at the start of it too, Bob. We're very much in the same stage. So I think it's just going to be one of those things that it's different for each group because of partly who we serve and partly the geography.
Are you really in Albuquerque?
I'm actually in the mountains of Albuquerque, but yeah, that's
okay. I flew out of there yesterday. I had no idea we had anyone
really?
from New Mexico on the call, but that's good.
Very windy. I bet the flight was adventurous.
It was, absolutely.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing, Jen. Let's see. I want to open it up to any more questions from the group. Frank, do you have any questions you'd like to put out there?
I've always got questions, but I'm a new kid on the block here at the foundation, so I'm absorbing. Shall I say? I will follow up on the conversation about reaching out to people. Phone calls are always great, right? You don't need to call for the ask. It's just, how you doing? What's going on? And it's easy to talk. And dropping a letter, right? Write a note.
Yeah.
It works. And we've got all these multiple ways of communicating with people that I haven't really been as good at as I am now, because staff has provided me with the opportunity to do a little bit more research. So yeah, it's always good to keep that contact. I had 2 contacts today with folks that we will talk to eventually.
Love it that you bring up a really great point. I think, especially when we're in a growth mode and knowing that we need to expand our bases. And I think you all are there, like you're all in most of you are in pretty early phases, or you're going through a new phase, that it's really good to challenge ourselves to just pick up the phone at least once a day and call someone.
Yeah.
And have a conversation about our organization. I think, whether you leave a voicemail or get someone on the phone and have a new impression of where they might be and how they might be able to help in some way, it just definitely gets us over that. So I challenge you, if you're not already doing that, perhaps just dedicate that 1 minute it might take to reach out and make a phone call, because in this world where a lot of people don't answer the phone, unfortunately, at least it's a, hey, we were just wanting to talk, maybe we can have a follow-up conversation. Or if someone does actually pick up the phone, it's really kind of meaningful to have a conversation about a place that we're passionate about, and we don't have to have the answers. We can ask questions and we can share why we're involved. So thank you. Let's see, who have I not heard? Annie, do you have any questions that you'd like to throw out?
I don't have questions, but I have something in regards to what you just said. It really is important to reach out. I experienced that a couple of days ago in regards to securing a scholarship. And they had been providing for us for a while, and she hadn't gotten anything because of, like what Bob was saying, is the turnover here has been not ideal. So being able to sit down, and we had a 30-minute conversation just in regards to, how she was feeling. She got to know me over the phone as the new foundations director and everything. And I was able to secure that $15,000 scholarship coming in for at least this year, maybe next. So it really is important to put yourself out there. It really is.
Thank you for sharing that.
And, Annie made a great point, because it takes a long time to build a relationship with many people. But if you let it lapse for 18 months, let's say, they haven't heard from anybody, you're literally starting over again. And so we're delighted that Annie's doing what she's doing, but it's a real treacherous path, because some people, don't even know why no one called or why no one reached out, but that's the rebuilding we're trying to do.
Right. I get it quite a bit, honestly, and it's nice because they're able to hear me, and they're able to know, why I decided to step into this position and help the school and all that kind of stuff. So it becomes personal, and I think that's what they need.
Absolutely. Because now you're their person. You're the one that called them. You're the, which is exactly what you need is those new relationships. So. Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions to pose, I will throw a couple more out there. What is everyone doing right now around recognition? Does anyone have anything interesting or unique to share surrounding recognition at their organizations? We know it's important. We know it's a big part of the stewardship process and having people feel connected and really a part. Jen, do you have something to?
Yeah, so we had a church, without us even asking, give us I was surprised. I think it was $15,000. And so I've been trying to meet up with this pastor. I've only met her once in person, and it was right before Christmas. So it was a very quick conversation we had. And So, you know, my little famous lion painting, I made that into print because, you know, for Christians, the lion is very meaningful. And I'm just going to write on the back a verse that pertains to, you know, the interaction and the support the church gave. So I hope that she'll love it. We'll see. I'm going to see her. It's taken months for me to get just a coffee appointment with this pastor, this poor pastor. She's so busy, but I think that that's really just my one thing that I hope it goes well.
That's great.
I love it. I think that, you know, when it can be personal, unique, and you're taking the extra effort to go see her in person, that's great. Donna, you're doing something kind of fun with recognition with your physicians right now.
The physician pins.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we, so I've worked hard on getting physicians involved in our physician giving society, and so in recognition of them, we made a little lapel pin for them to wear. Technically, physicians don't wear their doctor's jackets anymore, but they can put it on their outfits. I've learned a lot through this process, but yeah, so we gave the hand delivering lapel pins to them and thanking them for their donations and just updating them on what's going on with our campaign. So it's a work in progress because there's a lot of doctors in a lot of areas that I'm trying to track down. So, but it's definitely worth it. I think they've appreciated it. And we've seen doctors in the hospital wearing their pins. So, and if I don't see one wearing a pin, I ask them where it's at.
Yeah, but I think, like, you know, you are making it a mission to go and personally put the pin on them, see them, tell them something, thank them. You know, that touch point is powerful. And whether it's physicians or any other group that you all have that you're able to do something, it's, you know, that's very symbolic of your commitment to the fact that they're a part of your family and it's not just a transaction. And I think that's an important piece, you know, both in what you said, Jen and Donna. So anyone else have something?
And I was going to say one more thing on recognition. So we had a donor recently, a bank, give a large donation in honor of their board president. And so because we're building a hospice home, they had a watercolor painting made of the hospice home and presented it to the donor. The bank did. But as I've thought about recognition and stuff, what a great recognition tool that is for any of our major gift donors. Instead of giving them a plaque or just something else to sit on their desk, if we gave them a watercolor painting, that would be something meaningful to them because they've donated to that project. So that would be another idea for anybody that's actually in a campaign or has a building, or like, I love her idea with the lion, like, you know, whatever that is, providing that to the donor.
Fabulous. Thank you. Well, we are getting low on time. I'm going to call for any final questions for the group. We covered a lot of ground today. I think that was good. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for letting me put you on the spot, some of you. Very much appreciate that.